I think we'll go ahead and get started now. I know we're running just a few minutes behind, but I bet we can make that time up quickly. Thank you, and welcome to our joint Human Relations Subcommittee meeting this afternoon. I'm Representative Katie Dempsey. Next to me is Michael Parkerson, who is working with the House Budget and Policy Office, and Senator Unterman.
I'd like to welcome you this afternoon. We look forward to a great new year with the not just the 14 budget, but continuation, and look forward to working with Representative Dempsey. And I have a great analyst with me who has been traveling the state of Georgia during the interim, Amy Hobbs. She's been all over the state looking at facilities and looking at best practices and coming back and telling me all the wonderful things she's doing. So we're really excited. Thank you very much.
Well, thank y'all so much. I know the committee, I see some House members. Do we have some members from the Senate too? Or I know everybody's just working as hard as we can and quickly. But if you want to move up, you can. I know this may not be a full room since it's one of the smaller committees for us. But we will go ahead and we're going to be working off of the governor's 14 budget. We'll be back to revisit 15 again. So primarily we're going to do that. Does everyone from the House have that, or does anybody need the information? You might need a copy of everything. I think Ed Setzler, did you have? Okay. Anybody else, just raise your hand and we'll get it to you. Okay, great. So without any further ado, let's get started. And our first group that's going to be presenting today is from the veterans.
Thank you, Chairman Dempsey, Chairman Unterman. I'm Dan Holtz with the Department of Veterans Service, representing Commissioner Wheeler, who had a conflict this afternoon and couldn't be with us. We are looking at the amended 2014, which is in the governor's budget on pages 202 and 203. I did pass out just a short handout just to kind of give you a little taste for what our mission is, which is to assist veterans in the state of Georgia with benefits claims for compensation, pension, and services from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, but also state benefits. And right now we're still in the neighborhood of around 776,000 veterans in the state. We have two state war veterans nursing homes, one in Augusta and one in Milledgeville, that provide nursing home care to war veterans. And we also have two state cemeteries, one in Glenville, Georgia, and the other in Milledgeville, that provide memorial benefits and perpetual care for veterans and their family members following their passing. Our vision is to provide the highest quality assistance that we can to Georgia's veterans, also to provide the highest quality of nursing home care at both of those facilities, and to provide shrine standard services at our two state veteran cemeteries. We value Georgia's veterans. That's our mission. We value our partnership with the VA, which we have had for many years, as well as our partnership with the state veteran service organizations such as the Legion, the DAV, the VFW, etc. We presently have 51 field offices located around the state, providing assistance to veterans. Our Claims and Appeals Division is located over at the VA Regional Office in Decatur, Georgia, and they provide assistance to veterans with appeals of benefits claims issues. We also have the Veterans Education and Training Division, which is the state approving agency for all VA education programs that are conducted in the state of Georgia. It's a joint partnership between the VA and the Department of Veterans Service. That program is 100% federally funded. So one of our key responsibilities is to get the word out to veterans about what they might be entitled to in the way of benefits. And we have a number of ways that we have been doing that and are continuing to do that as we go through time. And those are listed on the next slide that is there. In 2014, the governor has recommended no changes to our budget from the current budget as far as the amended is concerned. So we're all in agreement on that because we didn't ask for anything. So with that said, basically, if you have any questions, I'm open to questions.
Yes, Representative Henson.
Same budget?
Well, the state population of veterans has been slowly rising from about 760 when I first came on board with the department about 13 years ago, and it's up to 776,000 now. We anticipate that it's going to continue to grow probably over the next 10 to 15 years, and then I believe the VA is projecting right now that the number will probably level off, but we don't know for sure. Georgia is one of those states that is a very attractive location for veterans to locate and settle, and so you know, it's kind of hard to predict as to whether or not that number is going to continue to rise, level off, or it probably will not go down, or if it does, it won't go down much.
I think my question really is more specific from, say, last year to currently. I mean, you're still with the same budget, are you? Is there an increase for 2015 because you're serving more people than you did in the 2014 budget?
We're serving about the same we're projecting that we'll be serving about the same in 15 that we're serving today in 14.
Representative Oliver.
Thank you. Chairman England and I were interested in the nursing home issues and the aid independence new revenue. How much new revenue do you think y'all have recovered based on that legislation?
You're talking about the fees?
Yes.
I think we're, about 1.2 million thereabouts, roughly, between the two homes.
And when we were looking at this a couple of years ago, your population in your nursing homes was decreasing. Has your population in your nursing homes continued to decrease?
It's kind of stabilized. It's not going up, which is what we had hoped that it would start to do, right. And we're still hoping that. Both homes are aggressively trying to market themselves around the state and make sure that everybody who is eligible for nursing home care are aware that the homes are there and the services that are provided and the cost for it. But we're still having the same attrition rate problem that we had 2 years ago when we had that conversation. As fast as we admit them, unfortunately, we're losing them also primarily to death.
Chairman England was thinking that y'all were granting pay raises to employees in the Milledgeville facility. The Milledgeville facility is almost 100% privatized through the Pruitt contract. Does your contract guarantee pay raises to those employees down there?
It does not guarantee pay raises.
Are they getting pay raises?
They have been getting some pay raises over time, yes.
And it must be relating to our private contract that guarantees them pay raises, but doesn't guarantee pay raises to state employees.
Well, I mean, that's an internal issue to the contractor. The contract requires that they provide total services for the nursing home care of the veteran patients at the home.
Well, I can't figure out why your budget isn't changing when pay raises are going out to those I'm not sure how many Pruitt employees there are in Milledgeville, but why does your budget not change if they're getting pay raises, but your other state employees are not? Well,
my understanding is that the Pruitt management has taken it upon themselves to provide raises and to do so out of the funds that they have available.
So there's no additional...
There has not been so far, no.
The contract does not call for additional money to go to Pruitt
now,
and you do not anticipate that in the 15 budget either?
At this time, no.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions? Representative Setzler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate you coming here and being with us today. I was going to follow up and ask some questions about the nursing homes as well. I know there's been some discussion. Representative Oliver's been vocal and very involved over the years about the federal funding that's available to us as a state and how that's being used relative to state dollars versus the private dollars. Where are we in reaching out and using some of those federal dollars for those programs to perhaps displace state funds?
Well, the funding mechanism for the homes, okay, before we established the fee, the daily fee, it basically was running about 50-50. State appropriations were funding about 50% of the cost of operations, and the federal funds were funding about 50% of the operation. When the fees were established, we married the fees and the state appropriations together, and in fact are now getting a little bit more in the way of federal dollars as a result of that, because of the way the federal formula works. So we are actively receiving federal funds to operate those homes. It's probably now about, I want to say 45% federal and 55% state and other.
One other question, if I could, Madam Chair, on the what are the incentives? You talked about wanting to raise the head count in the nursing homes. How is in particular the facilities, because we've got a contractor in that's operating a home here, what's the incentive for them to raise their head count? Are they paid sort of on a pro rata basis?
They're paid on a per diem basis, sir, yes. Now, the home in Augusta is not. The home in Augusta is paid on a 1/12 of the state appropriation basis. For the state side, the VA pays everybody on a per diem basis. And then the other funds, the daily fees, they are paid on a per diem basis also.
Is it within the scope of the contractor's responsibility to do outreach and to market the facility, or is that done through some other mechanism?
It is the responsibility of the contractor with concurrence from our office here in Atlanta. We have to review whatever they put out so that it's consistent with what our goals and objectives are, and that they don't put something out there that is, going to be problematic.
Is there a performance metric for them on enrollment, or folks there? Obviously, they can't control folks who are passing away, but in terms of the people they bring in each year, are there stated specific performance metrics for them in terms of recruitment?
Not specific, but the arrangement or the conversations that we have regularly with them is, bring as many people in as you can. Go out and try to obtain as many admissions as you can. Try to build that census up. And in the case of Milledgeville, where everything's on a per diem basis, the incentive is definitely there for them to do that.
One final question, Madam Chairman, if it's okay. Yeah. Do you keep track of where the residents that are coming into the nursing homes, what their home of record is before they move to the facility?
We do.
Could you make that available to us?
Yes.
I'd like to see where folks are coming.
Sure. I can tell you just right off the top of my head here, they tend to group around Augusta for the Augusta home, and they tend to group around Milledgeville for the Milledgeville home. However, we do have a number of residents at both homes that are from elsewhere in the state. So there is anybody in the state of Georgia who has resided here for 5 years or more immediately prior to admission is eligible for admission to the home. So if somebody from Valdosta wants to come to the Augusta home, they can apply to the Augusta home. If there's a bed, they can be admitted there if they otherwise meet the criteria.
And Madam Chair, I'm just trying to kind of explore that issue. In terms of serving the entire state, I know that there's obviously we're concentrated there in East Georgia. Mm-hmm. But if you could get that to me, or have your staff get that, I'd appreciate that.
Sure.
I don't see any other questions at this time, so thank you so much for your presentation. I will tell you, we don't have the handout, I don't think.
Okay,
Oh.
Senator Unnerman held on to it.
Here we go. We'll make sure they're up here for...
My apologies for that.
That's okay. That's okay. Just wanted to make sure we had it because you presented some great information for us. So thank you so much. Okay, and next, we will move on to vocational rehab. Not sure who all might be presenting from there. Well, hello. Hello, Director Schmid. Good to see you.
Excuse me. We do have a handout, which I think is coming around. That's not ours.
Driven.
Kevin, do we have the handout? Oh, there they are.
Great.
Well, while you're waiting for the handout, I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Greg Schmieg, and I'm the Executive Director of a relatively new agency, the Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency, GVRA. We went into existence on July 1, 2012. Our mission is very simple. It's employment and independence for Georgians with disabilities. And as somebody said to me out in the hall, it's a great investment because we produce taxpayers. I do appreciate the opportunity to present before both committees. Madam Chair, thank you very much for that. I would like, before I get into the presentation, just to acknowledge some of the fine people who work with me, because I do think it's important to recognize them. I sometimes get the privilege of standing before you, but it's the work that goes on behind the scenes that really deserves the credit. So in terms of some of my folks, I have Jimmy Wilson, who's our Chief Financial Officer and Operations Officer, Kevin Kelly, who's the Director of the Georgia Industries for the Blind, Bill Bullock, who's the Director of the Roosevelt Warm Springs Institute, John Bone, who's our Communications Officer, Kevin Harris, External Affairs. I'm going down the list here. Oh, I have to acknowledge our former Deputy Director, Mr. Keith Horton, or should I say Commissioner Keith Horton. We couldn't, and to be quite honest, we really couldn't have gotten off the ground without Keith's help, and I consider him a dear friend and a great ally. I also want to acknowledge our providers. You know, an agency that serves people doesn't do it in isolation, and I know that we have some of our providers with us today, and on the vocational rehab program in particular, we have providers such as the Albany Resource Center, Easter Seals, Goodwill, Bobby Dodd, Tommy Nobis, and they have just been, as we've gone through some of our challenges, I want to really recognize them and give them credit. They have really stepped up to the plate. Even though they have struggled equally with us, they have really helped us get through this, so I want to acknowledge them as well. I've got a brief presentation, and so I thought I would just give you a little history before we get into the amended 14 budget. And on the second page of your slide there, really I identify what I consider to be the agency's 4 major budget challenges when we went into existence. The first of those was the deficit that was really the resultant caused by the medical hospitals at Warm Springs. This had been a long-standing issue, and the solution to that, which we feel very excited about, is that this past July 1, we entered into a management agreement with Georgia Regents University and Health System, and we are moving towards a transition that as of July 1, 2014, the hospitals at Warm Springs will actually transition to Georgia Regents University. The advantages to that, it will allow Warm Springs to focus 100% on vocational services. It will allow us to use the administrative costs that we've had to split between vocational and medical to devote all of those 100% to vocational, which means they become eligible for our federal vocational grant. And I also want to give credit to certainly the staff and the folks from Georgia Regents University. They've been working very diligently. They're trying to make both of those hospitals financially successful, and I feel that they're a great partner. The second major budget challenge, and I'll be happy to entertain questions either as I go through the presentation or at the end, whichever you prefer. The second major budget challenge was basically, and a lot of you I've talked to, is our inability as an agency to maximize our federal VR grant. This year, which is federal fiscal 14, which started this past October 1st, our pot of available federal money for the VR program is $105 million. With our state appropriations and all other sources of match that we can cull together, we're going to leave about $31 million of federal money on the table. We're about $8.2 million short in match. And when that happens, obviously, the consequence of that is there's not as many people that we can serve. You probably all know, and you've probably heard from your constituents complaining that last year we had to close what we consider our priority categories, and I'm going to lead into major budget challenge number 3 there. Last October 3rd, I had to close all of our priority categories, A through G, and our priority category in the state of Georgia is how you determine who you should serve first if you have resources. Your highest priority category should really equal those individuals that have the most significant disabilities. When we inherited VR, it was spending at a pace of about $90 million a year. This year, our budget is $70 million a year. So we have controlled, and I think we've done a great job, controlled the spending on everything in VR that is not directly client related. So what we didn't touch was our case service dollars, which funds individual services, nor did we touch contracts with our providers. I just looked at the December numbers this morning, and I'm happy to announce that on October 1st, this past October, we opened Category A. February 1st, we will be opening all of our other categories and basically eliminating our waiting list because I think we've done such a good job on the cost reduction side. And I'll give you a specific example. A year ago, if you looked at the VR budget in its entirety, 55% of the total VR budget was in personnel, staff in VR. Today, that is 37% of the budget. We have consolidated offices. We've tried to do everything within reason to, you could call it right-size or refresh or reorganize the VR program. But I'm very excited about where we're going in the future. And then the 4th major budget challenge is really our Georgia Industries for the Blind. They have received for the past several years no state funds or no federal funds, and they are primarily a contract provider. Most of their contracts are federal contracts, and by a federal law, they actually employ 75% of their workforce are individuals who are blind or have a significant visual impairment. With sequestration and then the federal government shutdown, it really impacted the federal contracts that they work on, and so they have been able to the extent possible, flex their workforce. But the long-term solution to that, and again, I'm not asking for any additional money, the long-term solution is for them to diversify their product line, to move out of being solely dependent on federal contracts, to become commercially competitive, and become self-sustaining over a period of time. They exist solely for one reason, to put more blind people to work. So those were the 4 budget challenges we faced. If you flip to the next page, page 3, I just wanted to elaborate on this federal VR grant, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that. This is a snapshot of our current federal fiscal year, federal 15, and as I mentioned earlier, that giant circle there in the middle, you would see that's $105 million available to Georgia to provide vocational rehabilitation to people with all disabilities that are of work age. The way it's divided right now, you can see we're able to capture about $51 million of that for vocational rehab, $14 million for Warm Springs, $4.7 for the agency administration, $2.7 for business enterprise, and then that teal color is the $31 million that we will not be able to draw down or earn this year. To earn that, it would take an additional $8.2 million in additional match. So we're leaving about 30% on the table. Now, the unfortunate thing about that, and I wish I could say that if we returned the money, it would reduce the national debt. Unfortunately, the money does not do that. It goes to other states that have excess match. And so I know that we have a person from Massachusetts, but in the past, Georgia's money has gone to Massachusetts, West Virginia, and I forget the third state, but I don't like any of them because of that, so I apologize. But the importance of this, and really I want to underscore a point here, if you give me the pleasure here, it's the return on investment. There have been a lot of studies, and it's the cost of unemployment versus the benefit of employment for a person with a disability. Some states have shown that the return on investment is for every dollar that's invested in bringing a person with a disability to employment, the return to the state in terms of the economy is $16. So I think it's a wise investment. So that's the grant scenario, and then I'll just turn to the last page, which is really the overview of our amended 14 budget. And what you see there are all the programs that are budgeted, are appropriated through our agency, GVRA. You see the breakdown of the money. And there's only 2 changes in the amended 14, which I'd like to bring to your attention, and they're in that third column called changes. For the Georgia Industries for the Blind program, GIB, they are getting an additional, or it's proposed they receive an additional $118,000, and that will go to cover some of their operating expenses. And then the significant amount is the line below that, the Roosevelt Warm Springs program. They are getting, or it's being proposed, they receive an additional $5.4 million. That really is intended to continue the transition to Georgia Regents University. So one of the points I want to make is even though that's additional state money, it would be spent on medical services, and thus it would not be eligible as match for the federal VR grant. So I don't want you to think that we're getting more money to help draw down that $31 million. And in essence, that's our amended 14, and I'm open to any questions any of you have. Thank you.
Chairman Unerman.
Thank you. Thank you for coming and visiting with us today.
Thank you, Senator Arman.
I believe the Senate Budget Office has been working with you about this contract and the additional money for the hospital and the contract with the Georgia Regents.
We just worked on the grant.
You worked on the grant?
Yeah.
Different?
Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to know specifically what services are being provided for that amount of money. I mean, what is going on at the hospital that's any different? And
Actually,
I
the
know
first...
you're separating it out, right?
Correct.
And this is a part of the separation, right?
That's correct. So,
Well, we've been separating for a few years now, and spent a lot of money, and I just don't understand why we have to put in additional money one more year. You know, every year it's like one more year.
well, actually, Senator, with all due respect, we actually executed the agreement with GRU this past July 1, the beginning of this fiscal year.
Right.
On our own, we closed all of our medical outpatient clinics last April.
That's good.
And so there are 2 inpatient facilities, the rehab hospital and the long-term acute care.
So is this money going for the rehab part or for the long-term care?
It's going for both, and it's for improvements in the facility, it's for improvements in the ability for them to actually make those 2 hospitals profitable.
So if this is the last time we're having an infusion of money, what's our incentive for doing it? We got other hospitals that are being closed around the state. So why should this hospital be any different that we're extending out money? I mean, I know we have a long-term relationship with Warm Springs,
Correct.
but, you know, it seems like every year, you know, successively that we've put money in there, and now we're putting money in there for the last time. And I just don't understand it.
I can only share my opinion with you.
I know.
Allow me to share my
And I'm
opinion.
sure everybody in this room has one.
No. My opinion is that, to be honest, when polio was eliminated in our country, the hospitals really should have been closed, to be honest with you, because that's why they went into existence with President Roosevelt and polio. And so they have struggled historically for the last decades. So we were torn between a rock and a hard place: close the hospital that's not competitive, or find a strategic partner to see if they could make it competitive. And in all honesty, I felt like the better opinion was to find the right partner to see if they could make it competitive. It has, and I'm very passionate about Warm Springs, as you know, and I have a great personal love for it. It plays such a significant role in the history of our country, in my opinion, that I think it at least deserves a final chance. And I couldn't think of anybody better than GRU. And so that was...
But is it not true that there's a county hospital down there that's competing with it?
No, they do not offer rehab or long-term acute care. They're just a small critical access hospital.
But at one time, this hospital was doing
At one
surgical
time.
procedures.
That's correct.
And,
That's
you know,
correct.
and that's when the General Assembly was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
you know, you are competing. So they're no longer competing.
That's correct. They're no longer competing. And that hospital, as you can imagine, is doing very poorly.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're giving money to one in one county, and, you know, the other one we're watching dwindle away.
I don't know if you give money to the other county hospital, which is
Well,
Warm
they-
Springs Medical Center. I don't know. that.
Right. We can continue the discussion.
I will let you know that we have had our golf course closed. We've got state properties coming to look at it actually tomorrow, just as a follow-up with you. Is there any other questions I might be able to answer for any members of the committees?
Representative Oliver.
Forgive me, I wait.
You're okay?
I hope I understood you correctly, that you're eliminating your waiting list,
Yes.
and so...
As of February 1st, there will be no waiting list in the vocational rehab program.
And so I have a relationship through my church with one of your services for the blind providers who said they got no referrals for months and months and months.
That's right. That's right.
So now they're going to get a whole slew of them at once?
Well, to be quite honest, what happens is even though you take people off the waiting list by the mandate in the law, their statuses, and the process has been very tedious and slow. So our thought is actually to engage our providers, and if that's, say, for example, the Center for the Visually Impaired, to actually use them as an extender of the VR program to let them help us get those people into services more quicker.
You also have both children and adults.
Yes.
So cutting off all referrals was kind of painful.
Very painful. Thank you for the question. Any other questions?
Representative Henson, did you have a question?
Thank you. You were talking about getting folks back to work
Yes, ma'am.
and all. And when we get them back to work, does the state save money? And if so, how much?
Well, the state certainly saves money. When you think about the cost of unemployment, just for example, the unemployment cost to the public health care system, all the other factors when somebody is not employed. Another would be if they are receiving, say, for example, disability income. So if they are able to move from being a recipient of some kind of state or federal aid to becoming self-independent, the amount that they were receiving is the amount that would be saved. And it really does differ from each individual. But as I mentioned, in other studies, the cost benefit has been shown that if you can take somebody who is receiving an entitlement from the state or the federal government and make them an employable, competitively employable citizen, the return is $16 for every dollar you invest in that. So to me, it is all about employment. And as we all know, employment is also part of who we are. It's our identity. So beyond the financial savings, it opens up so many other opportunities in life that you may not, and you all know this, I'm preaching to the choir, but that you otherwise wouldn't have. I'm not sure I'm answering your question.
No, that's fine. I was just wondering. Thank you. And as you said, we're eliminating the waiting list as of February?
February 1st.
Because we don't have folks waiting to get on it, too.
No.
Okay.
So as of February 1st, there should be no waiting list. We should be able to serve anybody who was on the waiting list or any new person applying for services.
So therefore, you would consider that we fulfilled our commitment to folks with disabilities and getting them back.
But there's a caveat to that. The caveat is, in our state, there's 1.2 million people with disabilities. A little over 600,000 of them are of working age. And through our agency, we only touch at best maybe 40,000. So we are really just scratching the surface. So when I think about fulfilling our commitment, what would it take for us to serve 80,000 of our citizens with disabilities? What would it take for us to get them employed? So I don't want you to feel like we have solved the problems with helping people with disabilities find employment, because the numbers are really staggering. Our goal, and kind of the motto we have in our agency, and I apologize if I'm taking more time, is think big, serve more, do better. That's our goal. Any other questions I might be able to answer? Yes, sir.
Representative Setzler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am always reminded as I go around through the year, between appropriation hearings we do in January and February, and then a year goes by, we see things happen, we come back here. These programs, I'm always reminded the opportunities that I see out there in the marketplace, in viable business roles and companies that disabled people can serve well. I've confessed in this committee before, I hired a whole slew of folks one time, and I could have hired an entire cadre of 8 or 10 people who were disabled who could have done a great job in the role, but was just not on my radar screen. My question to you is, without going into too much detail, what metrics, what measurement tools do you have for yourself to measure new businesses that we're penetrating for the disabled? My sense is we tend to go back to the well, to the same places again.
You're absolutely right.
Serving with, and hey, they're very disabled, Georgian friendly. But what is our metric to expand the number? You guys are almost a Department of Economic Development.
Absolutely.
To the disabled community.
Absolutely.
The Department of Economic Development is looking to open markets for Georgia goods all around the world. You're looking to open markets for the disabled all around Georgia. But to me, perhaps the key metric is new companies to take people in versus going back to the old reliables. What is our metric that we measure that?
I'm going to give you a several-part answer. The first is the metric question. We have not really measured the number of new employers. So going forward, a metric would be, can we increase the number of employers that actually hire our clients by 25%, as an example? But we have not done a good job with that. We have, as you said, I think, and aptly put, we continue to go back to the same employers and ask them to help out. So what are the new strategies? One of those, and I'll share this example, is that, as I understand it, there's some new federal regulations coming out regarding federal contractors that they must hire 7% of their workforce, if they have a federal contract, that are persons with disabilities. The Regional Federal Contract Compliance Office is located here in Atlanta. We have put together a proposal about how could we as an agency help those federal contractors meet their compliance initiative of 7% of their workforce. So if you think about the number of federal contractors that exist, and then how would we do that? How would we actually go about getting in front of those potential new contractors and not doing it in terms of, please hire this person because it's a good cause, but hire this person because they're a competent worker and because the return to your company is going to be a benefit. So all I can tell you, an answer is that we have not done a good job in the past. We understand the metric that we need to have in place, but we need to look beyond what we have done in the past.
And I ask that question because it certainly would be low-hanging fruit if you've got contractors who have an obligation to do it.
Absolutely.
And
that's just one population of employers, obviously.
I think that I just would offer this to you. We won't probably see each other again until this time next year, but our next 2015 budget.
I'm coming to your office next week.
But I say that to say that I think sometimes we don't hold ourselves accountable to open those new markets. You get into a company that has 300, 400, 500 employees and they hire one person and it goes well, then there are other roles for years and years and years that you've sort of opened that market up, and I would just challenge you with that.
Well, I would agree with you, and I would just explain to you that when I was at Warm Springs, for example, and the Kia plant came in, 2,600 new jobs in our state. That's just the primary Kia plant. Then you've got the secondary. We should have been at the table when Kia was looking at coming into LaGrange, to be quite honest with you, our West Point. And we weren't. And it's in my opinion, it'd be much easier to be at the table at the front end with economic development as an example, rather than wait until they've already hired their 2,600 people and then try to go in at the back end.
And I say that if there's 600,000 Georgians who are of job age.
That's correct. With disabilities.
With disabilities. Let's say that only 400,000 of those really want to get a job. That may or may not be true. And you're serving 40,000.
We're only touching 10%.
Yeah, you've got about a 10% market
That's right.
penetration.
So what would it take for, internally what we would say is, what will it take for us to serve 80,000 and to double the number of placements? And one of the strategies has to be, we can't keep going back to the well of the same old employers. I do want to thank you for at least hiring people with disabilities. I applaud you for that.
Representative Harden, did you? Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Taylor.
Yes, sir.
Following up on Representative Setzler's thing, a great place to look at a test bed for that, or to look at how a company succeeded with that, is right out in Smyrna. Glock hires a lot of people. It's an Austrian company, but
I'm
did
familiar
an
with
assembly
Glock.
here, and they hire a lot of folks in that role because it's repetitive motion assembly and things like that, and just would offer up to take a look at that as just a model.
I appreciate that. And the other comment I'll make, I appreciate that lead, is that the other opportunity for employment is as an entrepreneur. And in our profession, it's micro-enterprising. And we've done a poor job in the past of really helping people develop and start up their own businesses. And as we all know, that can be sometimes even more successful than working for somebody else. I appreciate the lead, though. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions.
Thank you.
You so much. It's great to
Thank
see
you.
you.
Good to see you.
Appreciate your
Thank you.
information. Next up is the Department of Human Services. Commissioner Horton. Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon to you. It's very good to see you, too.
It's good to be here. We're trying to get loaded up, and we're going to get the handouts passed out to you all. We're actually going to try the overhead. I hope it's working. And while we're doing this, I want to do a quick introduction as my good friend Greg has done. Lynn Valinga is my deputy commissioner. Ms. Renorta Hurd is deputy commissioner as well. Demetrius Taylor is our CFO. And then I have commanders. I don't have division directors. I call them commanders. I'm retired military. So these are the individuals who are in charge of our foot soldiers, if you will. We have Dr. Sharon Hill, who is the commander for Division of Family and Children Services. We have Commander Ms. Tangela Johnson, who is in charge of Division of Child Support Services. And do we have Dr. J. Boulat here? Dr. J. Boulat in the back for Division of Aging. So we'll go ahead and get started. I just want to take this time to brief you on the amended changes for FY14, but I also want to take this opportunity as well to show you how we're trying to link up the funding with some of the initiatives. Now, some of these initiatives that we will show may be impacted directly or indirectly by the funding in amended FY14. So we'll start off with child support services. There's a $1.2 million ad for child support services, and just a little background about child support services and how this request came to be. Child support earns incentive dollars based on performance. So all states earn incentive dollars. And there's a finite amount of money that the feds allot for all child support agencies to compete for incentive dollars. And it used to be a match on those incentive dollars. During the stimulus period, all child support agencies were allowed to actually match the federal incentive dollars that they earn. So for every dollar that they earn, federal dollar they earn, they were able to draw down $2 more in match. So DHS and OPB developed a strategy to maximize that matchability and to thereby reducing the state funding. After the 3 years of the stimulus period, child support was able to build up a very small reserve of funding that they were able to make do over the next couple of years. And that small reserve has been depleted significantly. So this money that this $1.2 million, will go back to support child support. These funds will maintain the operations of child support, which is Georgia has one of the best operating child support agencies in the nation. In 2012, I think many of you might know, the child support program in Georgia was awarded the most outstanding program in the nation, which is a huge feat. And this program is all about accountability. So the next slide really talks about some of the initiatives that are ongoing in child support. Now I just want to highlight one or two of these. The parent accountability, which is the child support problem-solving court, very excited about because it's a partnership between the judges. It's a partnership between the Superior Court judges, the administrative officer courts, as well as with child support. And this model was established back in 2009, and it's designed to work with those non-custodial parents who continually come before the court for noncompliance of child support. So the judges were saying, look, we're tired of seeing these guys come before the court all the time and saying that they can't pay child support. So we established this model, and we have had some significant outcomes from this particular model. There are 18 child support problem-solving courts that are either pending or established. Our goal is to have one in every judicial circuit, so we have 49 judicial circuits. The other thing that I want to highlight is the collaboration within DHS. We have a renewed collaboration between child support and Division of Family and Children Services. We have the only statewide fatherhood program in the nation. And so we're going to be leveraging that fatherhood program, and child support will work with foster kids ages 14 through 20 on self-sufficiency and independence. All right, next amendment has to do with Division of Family and Children Services, $2.9 million, as well as the $455. Under the fee-for-service Medicaid, a portion of our caseworkers' time is billable to Medicaid under the target case management. It specifically is for those caseworkers who are working with our foster children on medical or behavioral health issues, to include taking them to the doctor or going to the therapist. Once we transition to the managed care program on March 3rd, which Clyde Reese is heading up, once we transition to CMO Amerigroup, we will no longer be able to bill to Medicaid. So CMS has said that there is only one entity in the state that can actually bill for Medicaid for the target case management, and that entity is going to be Amerigroup. So we will lose a significant portion of dollars that will offset our caseworkers to the tune of about $8.5 million. So this is equivalent to 170 caseworkers. So we're replacing the work has to go on regardless if it's a CMO or not. So this money will go to ensure that we have those caseworkers continually doing their work. And this is on, when I say caseworkers, I'm talking about Child Protective Services. The $455,000 ask is for 16 additional caseworkers for the Child Protective Services 24/7 intake system. When Dr. Hill and I started talking about, when we, back in probably July, August timeframe, we were really talking about how can we standardize our Child Protective Services on the intake side. And one of the things we realized is that we have variations across the state with 159 counties on determination or interpretation of procedures and policies. And so we embarked in September on designing a intake system for the state of Georgia. And one of the things we realized as we moved through this particular process was we needed more supervisors and some additional caseworkers. So that's what that $455,000 goes to do. All right, so I'm going to talk about some initiatives in DFACS on the safety side. And this is something that I think you all need to be educated about or informed about some of the things we're doing to try to strengthen our child welfare system. So one of the first things, if y'all been following the media, you know that we've had some significant challenges in our child welfare system, specifically with 2 cases. One of the things that Dr. Hill has done is she has established a team of experts to review those screened out cases. So screen out cases means that a person or mandated reporter or a reporter has made a call in to our intake system or to a local office, and that person on the receiving end, our caseworker on the receiving end, has gathered that information, gathered and analyzed the data, and made a determination that an investigation should not go out. A person should not go out and investigate. Well, through this particular process of going back and looking at all of the cases that were screened out, thus far, the 400 to 600 or so cases that we have looked at so far, about 13% of those cases have been overturned. And so she's sending individuals to go back out to that family to investigate those cases. The next thing I want to talk to you about is the implementation of 24/7. We talked about that. It's the intensive training for staff in interviewing. One of the things we realized is that we needed some type of forensic interview training for our staff. We realized that we had some caseworkers that didn't know how to ask the right questions to a child or an adult. So what Dr. Hill and her team have done is they have contracted with the Cherokee Child Advocacy Center to provide intensive forensic intensive training for our staff. So 1,500 staff will go through this training starting next month all the way through October, and we'll do the same thing for the adult side of the house. Another thing that we have done is to work with had external review. We've had an outpour of individuals who have said, we want to help. And Dr. Hill and her team and others, we have gathered together and we have met with the Barton Child and Law Policy Center. We're working on predictive analytics. We're looking at all the different things that are going to make an impact on the child welfare system. We'll go to the next one. All right, within the Division of Family and Children Services, we have the eligibility program. And the eligibility program deals with 4 particular programs: child care, Medicaid, TANF, and food stamps. The $54,000 that you see there is for the establishment of a unit to manage those kids that are going from our care and custody in the sense of the physical needs as well as mental needs will be transitioned to the CMO. that unit will be monitoring and ensuring that those children have a smooth transition to the CMO, and as well as ongoing throughout that process. Now, you say $54,000. There's a federal part to that as well, and this is only for 4 months, since the CMO won't come into existence until 3 March. And then the $638,000 is for one-time SNAP, to replace one-time SNAP bonus that we will not have anymore. So that's a one-time cost. So, eligibility services. In November, we completed the 3-year transformation of Georgia One, and this is really a new business model that we have, and I'm pretty sure you've heard it from your constituents. But this is new business models for Medicaid, food stamps, child care, and TANF eligibility. We essentially changed the front door from a physical front door to a virtual front door. So now you have customers who are your clients who call into the call center, or they go online and apply for these services. Now, I'm going to be the first one to tell you, we've had some significant and some major customer service challenges. I'll be the first one to tell you on that. But let me tell you what we're doing to fix it. So number one, we have restructured our business model to put more and dedicated people on the phones. We average now about 425 people on the phone. We were averaging, before January 1st, about 250 people on the phone. So we have increased the number of people that are dedicated, that are on the phones and answering phone calls now. Number two, on 3 January, we rolled out a self-service feature whereby a customer can now go online into their account on food stamp and Medicaid, and they can actually see their notice, which is a huge deal. It's a monumental deal. Now they're able to see their particular changes, or see if they were approved for a benefit, and now they can take charge of their own benefit program. The third thing we're doing, we are in the process of developing self-automated self-service options. Right now, there's no IVR, integrated voice recognition system, on the defect side of the house. On child support, we have an IVR system, or automated self-service. So it's similar to your bank. When you call your bank, you press 1 and you can get your balance. We don't have that in the Division of Family and Children Services for our call system. So we're working with GTA and others to have a self-service options, and we hopefully will have those implemented before the end of the legislative session. The fourth thing, we're looking for a new platform. One of the things, my goal is to get our folks that are answering the calls in a virtual mode, similar to what child support does. Child support was the first call center in the state to be virtualized. And so we're looking at doing the same thing on the defect side of the house, is to have a virtual call center, but we need the right platform to do that. Now, to talk about accountability. One of the things that, when I came on board in July, I had one of my first meetings with the FNS, the feds, on food stamps. And when we met with them, one of the first things I asked them was, how can we get a waiver to allow or to have individuals who are receiving food stamps with no dependents, who are not working in a work requirement type activity? And they said, you need to put in a waiver. So we put in a waiver back in August time frame. It was approved sometime in August. And so we will be rolling out a pilot in 13 counties across the state that have public transportation, a pilot for it, and we call it the able-bodied, it's called the able-bodied program. And this requirement will mandate that any person that is receiving food stamps who is not working, who has no dependents, to participate in some type of work activity. It could be job skills training, it could be vocational training, it could be educational type training. The ultimate goal is to have this implemented across the state, and to have gravy on the top is to have a requirement that anybody that is receiving food stamps, that has a child that is under 12 years, that is over 12 years of age, that is not working, to participate in some type of work activity. So that's accountability. In addition to this, when we start talking about food stamps, one of the things that I want to talk about is the collaboration. So the renewed collaboration that we have within Department of Human Services with the Division of Aging and the Division of Family and Children Services. So I mentioned one collaboration that we're looking at here's another collaboration we're looking at on the food stamp side of the house. Because in my mind's eye, we should be proliferating food stamps for our elderly population. We have individuals in our elderly community that have to make a tough decision between whether or not I eat or get my prescription drugs. So one of the things that DFACS has is federal funding for education of food stamps proliferation. So I've asked Dr. Hill and her staff to look at allocating a significant amount of those federal dollars to go to the Division of Aging so that they can do the education to our elderly population. That concludes my briefing, amended 14. What are your questions?
Representative Brockway.
Actually, Mr. Horton, thank you for being here and for your presentation. I got a couple quick questions about page 4, the 16 new positions that you've got there. This funding for those positions, is that for the half a year salary, or what's the expected salary of those positions?
The same as they will be the same as any of the other Child Protective Service workers. So I think the average, when a person comes in as a Child Protective Service worker, they're making around $29,000.
Okay.
And for a supervisor, it's probably in the mid-30s. They're making.
Okay. And what?
It is for 6 months. It is
okay,
for 6 months.
All right.
It is for 6 months.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Essentially, what sort of degree do they need to have? What's their?
You have to have at a minimum a bachelor's.
Okay.
At a minimum, bachelor's.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Representative Oliver.
Thank you for helping me get some materials together on cost of the Kenny A case.
Yes.
I was a supporter of that case in the beginning and believe it's done good work, but I'm also now a supporter of ending it.
Yes.
And directing that money in a more equal way across the state. Do you have somebody assigned in your office to look at the data about what has been accomplished in that case and what your goals are to end it?
Yeah, our goals are, Dr. Hill has someone who is assigned to Kenny A. As a matter of fact, for the first time ever, we have an expert. We didn't have a child welfare expert on the Kenny A team that was spearheading this effort. And so she has designated a child welfare expert to lead the team and to look at the outcomes that we have, those 32 outcomes that we have to come within substantial compliance with. So one of my first briefings was with the AG's office, and they came over, and we have a contract with the attorney who represents us. And one of the things that he said to us was that in order to get out of the Kenny A, the first thing that we need to do was those items, those 32 outcomes. Out of those 32 outcomes, there are many of them that we can control. Fix those, come in substantial compliance with those, and then I'll go to court on the others. So we are working diligently to try to come in substantial compliance with those that we control. Now, we have to be in substantial compliance for 18 months consecutively on the Kenny A. And so if you miss one particular outcome 1 month, then the clock starts all over again.
You know that the other states that have been in this have changed their orders. So I just want the subcommittee to have a chance to talk about this, about how we maybe can help you strategize bringing this case to a close.
We're taking a hands-on approach. From myself to Dr. Hill, I go to every meeting that we have. We have a Kenny A meeting once a month. With most of the staff in the Fulton and DeKalb that are working on this particular, mainly the CPS workers. We have the regional directors. Dr. Hill has brought in all the regional directors. We're going over the data. We are putting in, if you will, measures within the month for them to meet, and we're making some progress on those outcomes. And I'll be more than happy to talk with you in more detail.
Yeah, I just want the subcommittee to have a chance to talk at that. If I may ask one more thing in terms of anticipating of our work to come. On the page 229 of your budget for 15, you've shown some real kind of fallback on completing your child investigative reports in a timely manner. Is your budget document right now and in 15 addressing what you might need to bring those investigative reports timely.
You want to say again? Yeah, I think that, yeah, go ahead, come on up. I'm gonna have Dr. Hill address that if you want.
We are going to spend more time on 15 when we,
Okay.
you know.
Okay, all right, and I'll be prepared to answer that question.
Okay, was that, okay. Thank you. Representative Henson?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. So I need to turn that on. With regard to the call center, as you call it, self-service options, please, please, please make it simpler than the things that I go through trying to get a live operator to help me.
Right.
I mean, I'm sorry, these services can be so incredibly complex. And I hope that you don't make it complex and difficult to get a live person to help these folks. My second question is, I was looking back through this and you talked some about foster children. What are we doing about the ones that age out in terms of helping them? And especially with ensuring that they have some kind of health insurance to continue and all, because, you know, I think that, aren't they aging out at age 18?
Aging out at 18 is a recipe for disaster.
I know.
And so what Dr. Hill has done and her staff, she has put specific emphasis on this particular population. So one of the things that we're looking at is, why are our children not signing back in? So they have an option to sign back in even when they turn 18 and emancipate. They can sign back in. So we're going and we're doing surveys with our young folks at an early age to determine what their experience is with DFACS, what their experience is with the group home, or whatever the case may be, so that we can provide activities. I think one of the things that our kids grapple with is, if I sign back in, are you going to treat me like I'm 19 now? Are you going to treat me like a 15-year-old or 14-year-old? So we're looking at our policies and procedures to give a little bit more leeway with our youth, based on their ability and their ability to be responsible. So some of the things we're looking at is how are we treating them on the front end? What programs and processes do we have in place to see if we can get them back if they don't have a viable solution once they turn 18? And then the other thing too is making sure that they are equipped with either a high school diploma or a GED at age 18 so they can find employment. So we're working with them through that. One of the initiatives that we have, I just talked about, was the fatherhood individuals working with that particular group, that 14 to 20 age group, on independence and self-sufficiency. So we are putting resources toward that particular population to ensure that we're catching those individuals before they turn 18, and even catching the individuals that have aged out.
Okay, I just want to follow up with one or two questions. One is the individual that, of course, needs a place to live. Secondly, those that want to go on to college and or finish high school. Now, are we providing enough resources for them to be able to be independent and do this?
Yes, I think we are providing the resources for those individuals to go on to college. I had the opportunity to participate before I became the commissioner in the celebration that is held annually at the Rialto, and it's absolutely wonderful to see these kids come from all across the state who have graduated from high school, or who have received scholarships to go to college, or who have graduated from college. It's absolutely phenomenal to see all these kids bust in from across the state to go across that stage and to get their graduation certificate again. So yes, we are providing resources for those individuals to go on to college, or to go to the technical school to learn a trade, or to get an associate's degree.
We have two more questions, and we're running just a little bit behind, so I'm gonna address both of those, but let's all try to be as brief as appropriate. Representative Epps.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Quickly, you said you have restructured your call centers. Has that taken place recently?
It took place recently, it took effect 1 January. It took effect 1 January. We started the process back in September, October, feverishly, trying to understand. Now, this was a 3-year process that was ongoing. So as I started evaluating what the end state was going to be, I knew that we had to make some changes because we were just having too many customer service issues, unacceptable for our citizens. And so we have gone through, my deputy and Dr. Hill have gone through and have scrubbed and relooked and changed things around, ensure that we're holding our own staff accountable for the work that they're supposed to be doing, and ensuring that people who are designated for phone duty are actually on the phone.
You know, bear in mind, you're dealing with people that have comfort in being able to formally have come into your centers and face-to-face work. Now they're told not to come in. You know, contact us.
And we have changed that. I have changed that. So they can come in the office. So if a person needs to come in the office, they are to come in the office. If they need to come in the office, if they want to come in the office, they can come in the office. They're not to be turned around. They're not to be handed a 1877 number and go to the local phone and make a phone call. They are to be dealt with in the office.
Okay, so they do not have the capability.
They have the ability to go to the office. The other thing that we're doing too is we're also going to be rolling out, providing a number, because one of the things that happened in the rollout was that all the numbers got rolled up into the 1877 number. So we're going to be reestablishing phone lines that for local law enforcement officials, for elected officials, for judges to make a direct call into the DFAC's office.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And we have one more question, Representative Donahue.
Yes, sir. I want to get your cell phone before we leave here.
Absolutely.
The biggest thing that I've had a problem with is return calls. It's a nightmare. It's something that's got to be fixed. Several times I had people tell me they've been leaving messages in Gainesville, Georgia, and they've been trying for 2 years. They would meet with a certain person, never have a follow-up. Now, on that, the other problem, when I call personally, I get nowhere. It takes me 30 minutes to go through the prompts if it doesn't concern where I'm going to talk to a live person.
We understand. I understand that, and that's something that I am I'm diligently working on to fix.
And I appreciate it. I'm not trying to be mean or anything.
No.
I want to see it fixed because our constituents' time is very important.
Oh, I agree.
My time is very important, and when I see what they're going through, it's very frustrating. And to run a business, you have to run efficiently.
I agree.
Returning calls and making sure we solve problems.
It is unacceptable.
Yes, sir. But thank you. But I do want your number.
I will give it to you.
Thank you.
Senator Unerman.
Representative Donahue, I appreciate what you say, and I have heard from legislators all over the whole state. And some DFAC's offices are worse than others. And, you know, when you're dealing with a county of 1 million people versus you're dealing with a county with 10,000 people. But the calls are all basically the same, the lack of services. And I have been working with the governor's office and with the commissioner, and we are striving to make it better. But we have heard from legislators across the whole state, and I want the legislators to know that we, Representative Dempsey and myself, we all know the problems, and we're working to resolve them, and we're working with the commissioner.
They will be fixed.
Thank you so much. Seeing no further questions, we'll look forward to hearing more about 15 when we'll have a little more time too. Thank you. And now I believe Commissioner Shelp will join us. Excuse me, why did I say that? Oh, excuse me. Thank goodness it's Commissioner Berry. I'm so sorry. God. Okay, if we can all gain our composure. That was just a little humor to lighten everybody and wake you up just a little bit. So sorry. Now we welcome the very honorable Commissioner Berry.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairs, and it is, of course, an honor to be here and with the distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present our 2014 amended budget. We're loading up. I'd also like to thank the governor. Of course, his support has been unbelievable. The Governor's Office of Planning and Budget, without their support, we would not have been able to get this budget complete in the way that we have. And also, throughout the last year, members of the House and Senate budget offices who have traveled around the state with us. It has been a remarkable year, and again, I just want to recognize their hard work. As we talk through our presentation, we don't have a lot, and maybe we can catch up on a little bit of time, but I did want to take a few minutes. To let you know that 2 weeks ago on a Friday, I was able to spend 8 hours down at Central State Hospital. And I had what I considered the golden key, and I went through some of the buildings from the late 1800s that had not been gone through, some of them in 70 and 80 years. And I went through the basement floors all the way up to the top floor, the one building that has no roof on it any longer. And I went to the Jones building where the morgue is still in place. And I went through over 1,000 rooms and thought what that must have been like in its heyday when it was serving 12,000 individuals, and what the history was like back then. And it really brought back why we're moving to a community-based system of care, certainly with the importance of having strong, viable hospitals, because we do need them, and incorporating them into our comprehensive system of care. But walking through an institution like that, and again, over 200 buildings on a hospital campus, when that was the only thing that was available for individuals with behavioral health or developmental disabilities, was an eye-opening experience. And I say that again because now, I just was looking at the numbers before we came in. Today, on the adult mental health side of our hospital system, we had about 260 people in our state hospitals on the adult mental health side. And I think that as we continue this journey from 140 years ago, if we think about telling a story of 140 years ago and where we are now, it's a remarkable journey that we've been on. And the last 5 years have been even more intense than I think any of us could have ever imagined. You think back to that hospital, and then to 15 to 20 years ago, and Karina is here with the state ombudsman, and you think about the work she's doing of helping us with the Olmstead plan, and you think about people living a life of recovery and independence in the community, and what a remarkable journey that's been for them. So you think back 20 years ago when the federal Olmstead decision was forced upon states, and it was the right thing to do, but Georgia was the Olmstead state, and you think that we're going to do all of this right and get it right. And then you move forward 15 years, and we have the CRIPA lawsuit, which we'll talk a little bit about. And the CRIPA lawsuit showed that we had significant problems in our state institutions and that we needed to clean them up. And thanks to your support and your constant, unwavering support for individuals with mental health and developmental disabilities, we are now, and we'll talk about this, we are now probably 1 week away from fulfilling the CRIPA settlement agreement with the United States Department of Justice, which is absolutely a monumental task. And again, the support from the members of the General Assembly, we would not have been able to do that without you. So you would think that with the CRIPA settlement agreement that we would have done better, but then fast forward 2 years from that settlement agreement, and we signed the ADA settlement agreement, the big one that we're under now, the groundbreaking one that Georgia is leading the nation in. And it's just been a remarkable, remarkable journey of building communities while certainly making certain that our hospitals are the highest quality that they can be, and that if somebody does need to go into a hospital, that they have a good setting to go into. So I just wanted to get us started with that. Our budget for 14 is very straightforward. We have some agency accomplishments that I just talked a little bit about. On the settlement agreement, I wanted to share with you that on the mental health side this year, we were 99.7% compliant. That's because of the hard work that our providers are delivering the care for us, and in a partnership that we've never seen before. That's providers like our community service boards, along with agencies like Community Friendship and Chris Kids and Mentor and other providers who are doing absolutely phenomenal work with us in this partnership. It's partnering with the associations and things like that that have really gotten us on the same page. So 99.7% compliance on the settlement agreement. Unheard of. The Department of Justice says it's unheard of. And again, I want to thank our providers for coming to the table and hitting a home run with us on that. We talked very briefly about the CRIPA settlement agreement. For those of you that don't know, that's the Civil Rights of Institutional Persons Act. That was when the Department of Justice came into Georgia and found that the situations in our state hospitals were unacceptable. Over the last 5 years, we have devoted a tremendous amount of time, energy, financial resources, personnel resources to make certain that when people go into our state hospitals, they get great care. And I'm very proud of our staff for fulfilling that obligation. We have new crisis stabilization units and crisis service centers popping up throughout Georgia, especially where we have closed some of our state hospitals, again, with the focus being that as I've traveled this state, and over the past year, I have either driven through and stopped in almost every single county in this state. It has been a remarkable, remarkable experience. One of the common themes that I hear when I meet with sheriffs and when I meet with local legislators is that they are frustrated that their clients have to travel far distances to get care. Sheriffs are beside themselves when they have to drive 2, 3, 4 hours to get their individual to a facility. With these behavioral health crisis service centers that are part of our crisis continuum, they'll be able to be served closer to home and have access closer to home to their aftercare. We effectively and efficiently closed the Southwest State Hospital on the 31st of December of this year. It was a remarkable job that Dr. Risby did. He was down on site for the last 2 months, usually 3 to 4 days a week. We transitioned people out into the community. We also, and you'll see this in the budget, we also were able to transfer a large number of individuals that were there who were on the forensic unit to the West Central Hospital over in Columbus. So you'll see that some of our dollars from the closure of that hospital followed them to the Columbus Hospital, where we continued to build that capacity there. So we were very pleased with that. I think one of the most exciting things that has happened is that we have enrolled 2,451 individuals into DD services. A remarkable, remarkable accomplishment that Dr. Lee has been leading with our Division of Developmental Disabilities. And it is just the success stories of seeing some of these individuals who are now, after 30 and 40 years living in a state hospital, living successfully in their communities is just a remarkable, remarkable accomplishment. And then finally, I just want to briefly touch on the Behavioral Health Coordinating Council, which I know that both of you participate in. The work that we have been doing in partnering with the other commissioners, Commissioner Reese, Commissioner Horton, who you just heard from, Commissioner Niles. This work is what is driving, Commissioner Owens, driving people to get the services that they need. And it has been such, your support on the Behavioral Health Coordinating Council has been instrumental. I think you are seeing a group of state employees who come together to say, how can we work more efficiently and more effectively? And it's just an honor to chair that meeting and to have so much investment into all of the people that touch our people with behavioral health and developmental disabilities and substance abuse issues. We'll go on to ensuring easy access to high-quality services. And I think that if you hear a common theme from us, we believe that people can live a life of recovery and independence. Recovery on the mental health side means they can have jobs, they can be good spouses, they can be good parents. I recently, 2 weeks ago, again, was down and I've been traveling a lot lately. I was down at McIntosh Trail, and I met with 2 young ladies who were involved in the TANF program. 3 years ago, they were incarcerated now and pregnant with some of their 4th. One of them had their 7th child. They are now working, living on their own, being great parents to their children, supporting their families, and that's through some of the great work that the TANF program allows us to do. And it's just been absolutely. There was not a dry eye when we were talking to these young moms. When we talk about high-quality services, we're talking about holding providers accountable. Many of you have called over the last year, and the times that we have spent with you has just been, again, unbelievable, the most humbling experience when you all say, how can we help? I want to thank you again for that. But one of the things that we are really challenged with is high-quality providers. And as the Department of Justice comes in to do their visits with the settlement agreement, they expect, and we should expect nothing less than to see great, great, great providers. And we have to ensure that for the people that we serve. So high-quality DD placements, we are going to continue to enhance our crisis service centers and things like that in our crisis centers. Settlement agreement we've already talked about in the CRIPA one. The hospital transitions, I do want to share with you that this has been some of the most challenging work that we have ever done. These are the most significantly medically fragile individuals that anybody has ever dealt with. In our communities, to be quite honest, our communities do not have the expertise yet to serve the medical needs of these individuals. So we are having to go back and train and get doctor consultation from some of our great staff that have worked in our hospitals to help some of the primary care physicians understand how to serve these complex individuals in the community. One of the things, again, that I'm so proud of is that when we saw that this was coming, we were proactive and we kept on staff some of our doctors who had been working in our state hospitals for years. We kept them on to be state employees and to follow some of these individuals into the community, and that has been a remarkable resource for our communities to have available to them. We have very few budget changes for our 14 budget. We have a one-time cut. It's the ERS holiday. This is a very complicated piece of the pie that we manage, but it has to do with the employee retirement system. It's a one-time cut of $1.25 million. It primarily affects the community service boards. Having come from them, it is probably one of the most frustrating cuts that we have to deliver. It's money that we give and then they hold, and then if it's not used, it comes back. But that is part of our cut this year. It's done in cooperation with the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget. It's something that we have constant discussion with the community service boards and with the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget on, and it's a very frustrating situation to try to manage. But you may hear about that throughout this session. The other one, and we briefly spoke about this, we did move $5.4 million from the Southwestern State Hospital to the West Central Hospital in Columbus. That was to make certain that as we move those individuals from the forensic unit down in Thomasville to the forensic unit up in Columbus, that they had the physical plant space issues that they were dealing with, also some of the increased staffing issues that they would deal with when they absorb some of those individuals. We reduced at the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget direction, $50,000 reduction for Rockdale Cares. And then finally, you'll see the most significant budget movement for us, which in a lot of regards is a budget neutral, but is our support for the single foster care CMO. And the expectation, and I'm sure you've heard from other commissioners on this, and just by the way, I'll let you know, last night we had a very late night office. We were there until almost 8 o'clock last night. Commissioner Horton, who just left, his car was still there when I left. And I talked to him this morning. He was there until almost 9 o'clock last night. His car is usually there before I get there early in the morning and late. That guy is really working hard to clean up this social service issues that he's been challenged with. But we're transferring those dollars, as you see, to the Department of Community Health for the foster care CMO. Our hope with that, of course, as many of you have heard, is that we will see better outcomes, that by managing the comprehensive primary care and behavioral health care for these individuals involved with foster care, that we will be able to provide better outcomes for them. And again, everything that our agencies are now doing is to provide for better outcomes for the individuals that we serve. I think the highlight of the year certainly was the fact that we spent 99.3% of our budget last year. The dollars that you gave us, we spent for the purposes that you asked us to spend them on, and we can show you positive outcomes for the individuals that receive those services. That's huge and something that you all should be very, very proud of. If you meet with some of the clients that we serve, they are so thankful to your support. And without the dollars that you allocate, they recognize that they would not be able to live the lives that they're living. Looking ahead, we have a focus on the future, and as we continue this movement from 140 years ago at Central State Hospital, which one time served 12,500 individuals, through some of those buildings that I walked through, we've accomplished, or soon will be officially recognized as accomplishing the CRIPA settlement agreement, and now we will be ultimately fulfilling the settlement agreement, the ADA settlement agreement. We do have some challenges. The Craig Nursing Home that we're closing down at Central State Hospital, the state of Georgia's only run nursing home that we operate. The complex individuals, I spent time with one of the members of the AMICI, the group that brought the lawsuit against us, there a couple of weeks ago. Again, we met with every individual who was staying on the Craig Nursing Home. We went with every single one of them. Some of these complex issues are so challenging. And as we have gone to close the Craig Nursing Home, we are finding more and more that our providers are really struggling with serving this level of patient. And it is a challenge for us. Some of the individuals have had to go into nursing homes because that's where their families want them. Some of the nursing homes are not capable of delivering the quality of care that we have been delivering. So it is a challenge for us. Workforce retention and recruitment. Georgia is in the bottom tier as it relates to our workforce, and we are struggling with this. We're struggling with it on the community side of the house, and we are struggling with it in our hospital side of the house. It affects everybody. And I think one of the challenges as we move forward is that as we start to see other agencies be able to give raises to some of their correctional officers and things like that, state hospital workers, we're going to have to pay attention to that. And it's something that we need to keep a very close eye on. If we expect our clients that we serve to get the best care, we're going to have the best people delivering that care. So that's something that we're keeping a close eye on. The ultimate loss of the one-time funding, those dollars that used to come into the hospitals, that as we move to move away from the institutions to the community, again, making sure that everybody understands we are keeping a hospital system in place. The numbers of beds that we have is adequate for the number of individuals that we think will need hospitalizations now that we're building the communities. Remember, the goal is to serve individuals in the community who should be served in the communities, and those that need a hospitalization, we will have that capacity. The other challenge that's interesting, and you may have read the article recently, about down at Central State Hospital. There's a new vampire show that is filming down there. What do we do with these massive campuses when we close them? And now down in Central State Hospital, it's becoming a movie set or a TV series set. But there are some wonderful, wonderful plans that have been discussed. I know, Chair Dempsey, up in your area, there are some great ideas being tossed around about what to do with these massive hospital grounds. We've never had the experience before of having this much property with this many buildings that are vacant, and what do we do with that? And so we're working with the State Properties Commission to figure out what to do with some of those pieces of property. The other big challenge that we've heard of as we've traveled around the state, and again, it has just been a remarkable year of traveling. I've been to every community service board throughout the last year. I've been to over 100 private providers, and we visited with you in your local areas. I've seen incredible work. But one of the things that we're hearing very clearly is that sometimes our policies, our practices, and our legislation, as we have moved to this new model, do not mesh up. Sheriffs have been very vocal about this, and it's something that we're going to have to continue to work on. One of the things that you'll see this year is legislation that's coming through from our department that we're carrying with the governor's office on the community service boards. And we've got a very, very strong, robust community public agency network, and we are doing everything we can to ensure that that system is a strong, viable system. And it's been a wonderful partnership working with them as well. And so you'll see legislation that will come through that will strengthen our public system. And finally, we need to make certain that we're enhancing access to care. We are asking our providers to do more than we've ever asked them to do before. We want to talk about the social service easy access. We want open access to our clients. We want to be able to have people walk in whenever they're ready to receive services. We want them to have the ability to walk into a walk-in center. And that's part of the behavioral health crisis service centers, and some of our outpatient centers are moving in that direction. We're expanding our communities, and we are, of course, very, very committed to improving accountability. You all put in a tremendous, tremendous amount of money into our system, and we have to make sure that the outcomes that we are delivering to you show you that we are good stewards of those dollars. With that, I will close and maybe, if need be, answer some questions. But certainly, again, it is an honor to be here and an honor to be with all of you today, and cannot thank you enough for your support.
Thank you so much. Senator Honorman, do you have anything to start with? Okay. Do we have any questions? Representative Taylor.
Two quick questions.
Yes,
One
sir.
is, are you seeing and this kind of cross-pollinates across with some other departments?
Yes, sir.
A lot of returning combat veterans now.
Yes.
Multiple combat tours. Are you seeing a lot of substance abuse or mental issues that you're seeing referred to you on that side?
We are, and one of the things that is interesting to us is the partnership that we are going down the path of with the Veterans Administration. I was just about a month ago down in the Hinesville area, and we have an outpatient clinic down there that the Gateway Community Service Board operates. The number of veterans that are coming in with substance abuse issues, so that Community Service Board has dedicated more resources to do that. What's been phenomenal about that is that the city and county both agreed to allocate more space to the Community Service Board so that they could have more capacity, both from a state space perspective and then from the department and the Community Service Board, a personnel standpoint, to be able to serve vets. We spoke at the Veterans Conference down in Savannah about 2 months ago, and there are some very concrete steps that we're taking to partner with VA, and it's just a great emerging partnership. So the answer is yes.
Yeah, because I can see there's probably some concentrations as well.
Yes.
Columbus.
Same thing in Columbus. We were there. Yep.
Because and I think you're getting a lot younger and younger.
Yes.
People that are going to need longer term issues. 25-year-old combat vets that have been on three 1-year tours.
Absolutely.
We need to do. Second question is basically, and it's totally off that subject. When somebody comes in to community service center, say a foster child who needs mental care health, what's the average time frame to actually get that person access? I've heard 90 days, something like that. I just want you to clarify that.
So it's an interesting, it's a great question. Some of the community service boards and then a large network of private providers have moved to what we call open access. And that is a new model that we're encouraging our providers to implement. And that's where you have what's called a pit of clinicians who are available for anybody that could walk in, including children. So the wait times historically over the last 8 years had gone up for people to access, especially on the children's side, care. So through this open access model, the goal is to drive down that time. I don't have an exact day or number of days on the children's side, but we can get that to you, and we'll get that to you within the next day or so.
Appreciate it. I'll leave it on my card. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions, and I think that's a huge sign of the remarkable work that you and your department are really
We
doing.
have a phenomenal team that I am so proud of, and it is an honor every day to come into work with this group of people. Jeff and Lee and Chris, who present the budget, and our clinical team are just a phenomenal group of people. So thank you very much.
Well, and I think Chairman Unterman and I are quite privileged actually to serve on that coordinating council with y'all and to see that. It is a phenomenal thing to see the people that are in the room truly working together to make sure to coordinate all services and how much it is intertwined in some of the great outcomes that we're already seeing, but even some bigger ones that I think are ahead. We will look forward to hearing more from you on the 15 budget.
Great. Thank you so much.
You.
I wanted to say the same thing. I've had the privilege of going out, going to homes, and they do a remarkable job. Very, very good job.
Thank
They
you.
are.
Thank you.
I was trying to stop coughing. I would push the button.
Thank you. You know, we can hear each other pretty well in here too, without that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone here from the Department of Labor to speak? Okay, great, great. And that will be our final testimony for today.
You just want to start with?
Butler, we just really appreciate you being here this afternoon. I know you have been jumping all over the state today, doing good things and good work.
Yeah,
so thank you.
This is going to be one of those 300-mile days, too.
We'll take a minute to settle back down and shut the door.
Now, are you going off of the,
14. Just
I mean, the governor's sheet? Y'all don't have, okay.
the governor's 14. I think we're on page 136 is what we have here. Oh, you don't have to. That's right. Okay, and Senator Unterman does not have labor, so she may slip out because she's been in here a very long time. I know you've been sitting there since health began. Thank you. Look forward to talking to you soon. Okay. And he is not here today, I understand, so we will go on and get started. Wrap it up for everybody. Oh, great. Thank you.
Well, I'm probably not going to hold you up too long, Mr. Chairman. But thank you for having us here today. We'll quickly go through this. I'm sure that everyone in here has already glanced over this. There was basically no changes from the budget that was passed out of here last year. I will bring a couple things to your attention, though, that are not in the budget document. First of all, we did lose after session closed out last year. We did see a loss of funds around. Actually, we ended up actually losing the funds as of June 30th. It was approximately about $4.6 million of rapid response funds that normally had been used to help out with layoffs when they happen of large corporations where we come in and we help with layoffs. That was transferred over to the Governor's Office of Workforce Development, which did impact us. Some of y'all had made some phone calls to my office around June and July due to the fact that we did have to lay off somewhere in the neighborhood of about 40 individuals. And so just a quick explanation, that is why we had to do that, because we had about 90 days in which to make up the difference in that funding. And of course this is not for this budget, but in the next budget we will actually be losing an additional amount of about $6 million of federal funding due to sequestration and the end of extended benefits. And quickly, real quick, one thing, this is kind of a 14 and 15 budget thing. We have talked about the Unemployment Trust Fund over the last several years, and General Samuel was kind enough to go with a few of our recommendations to make some changes to help us get back to paying off that loan and getting to solvency. You'll be happy to know that from our high of almost $1 billion loan, we currently now have that loan balance down to $154 million, and we project to have that paid off by May. And so we will have that paid off. This year will be the last year we have to make an interest payment, and then next year this time when they send out the federal unemployment tax bills, all the feeder credits that the businesses have had lost during this time will all come back, and you'll see approximately about $210 million go back into Georgia's economy from those feeder credits coming back. So we ended up paying this off way ahead of schedule.
Well, that is certainly something to be very grateful for.
Yeah, matter of fact, we project to actually earn some interest off of them this year instead of the other way around. So
don't everybody smile too fast or anything. Okay, are there any questions for Commissioner Butler, who has traveled really a great way to be here?
Well, just kind of one of those things, you know, and I got to go right back to where I was.
Well, be careful. Do you have... Right.
We could have Skyped it in, is that what you're saying?
But it is always good to see you, and we appreciate your work.
We'll definitely have a lot more in-depth discussion when we do the big budget. We do have some concerns going forward due to the fact a lot of it's going to be, we're being impacted by a lot of changes on the federal funding side, and we do have some concerns, and we'd like to kind of voice those. So we'll be probably coming seeing you first.
Right.
Do you know if we're going to do a joint session next time, or is it going to be?
Don't have a date, but I think it could be pretty soon.
All right.
You know,
We'll come see you and we'll talk to you about it. We'll give you a preview for it.
Well, thank you so much, and we will look forward to trying to understand that as well. Thank y'all so much. This will adjourn this meeting, but if I could just see my House members up here for just a minute.